Hey there guys, welcome to Anthony Reviews, where of course Anthony reviews. And as you can tell from the video title, we have another collection video for you today. We are looking at all of the brand new Transformers Shattered Glass figures from Hasbro based on the now, I guess, sort of defunct Shattered Glass universe. So for those of you who are unaware, quick history lesson, Shattered Glass is sort of a play on the alternate universe, good is evil, evil is good trope. Very similar to Mirror Mirror from Star Trek, hence the shattered glass thing about it. So Transformers does that, Autobots are bad, Decepticons are good. Years ago at BotCon, they had released exclusive figures that were repaints of existing figures to have this shattered glass universe. Now there are new comics, there are new figures based on it, and it looks now that IDW no longer has the license, they're pretty much done. So what I have here is a complete new age, I guess, version 2, whatever you want to call it, Transformers Shattered Glass collection. So we've got all the figures. Let's just take a look at them. So the first thing to come out was a 2-pack featuring Optimus Prime and Ratchet. Now, Optimus Prime here is probably the most famous use of the Shattered Glass color scheme. You may have seen this purple Optimus Prime before, not to be confused with characters like Nemesis Prime or even Toxitron. It is an alternate universe evil Prime. He's got the shattered glass. Get it? He's got the windshield here, a purple Autobot symbol, sort of Ava colors, if you will. We've got the purple and green. You know, purple can be an evil color. Lex Luthor, Green Goblin, you name it. So this is cool. Optimus, of course, is a very heroic, badass character. So you can assume that this guy is a complete jerk. So that's good. That's nice, I guess. And then we also do have Ratchet. And actually, the main reason I have any of these figures is because these are all my girlfriend's figures. She is a big fan of Ratchet. And so a new Ratchet figure came out. She bought it. And now, oops, she has all of these Shattered Glass figures. But I like the colors here. We've got the sort of medical scrubs blue all over them with some purple sort of accents. Purple seems to be a big theme with making these guys look evil, as you'll see later. I think I would have liked it if the hands were also maybe this blue color, and there's just a little bit of variance. It's not as noticeable in person, but from here to here, you can kind of see it. Yeah, I mean, it's Ratchet. He's an evil scientist in this version, so that's cool. You know, this mold was kind of like hard enough to get as it is because the other version was also an exclusive. I believe these were exclusive to maybe online retailers, maybe places like Amazon, Entertainment Earth, if I remember correctly. But this is our first taste of the Shattered Glass universe with these brand new figures, brand new molds, now repainted in evil colors. And I think it worked. I think it was a smart move to start off with someone like Optimus Prime, very iconic, and then you pack in a character like Ratchet, which is like, ooh, maybe they'll do some other characters, not just like the big ones, but, you know, some secondary characters. Still G1, of course, it's Ratchet, but not just the usuals like Megatron and Starscream and whatnot. Although we'll get to them. And of course, to compare, we have the regular versions. Once again, that Ratchet I was mentioning earlier, that was also an exclusive and a different 2-pack. And then Optimus Prime, which has been released a couple times now, I believe. So, yeah, you can see super big differences between the two, whether it's just the harsh colors or whatever. Yeah, you know, purple, like I mentioned, seems to be a very big indicator on whether or not you're evil. So, this is a good color. What can I say? They also do come with their own versions of the Matrix of Leadership. Classic Optimus Prime here with the silver and the goldish orange. And then meanwhile over here, you've got that green, those purples, you know, reflective of the rest of the character, which is interesting because I wouldn't exactly call these Optimus Prime's colors, but this guy, it's like he got it themed to himself, or I don't know. Either way, it obviously matches. After that 2-pack, the rest of the figures in this line were exclusive to Hasbro Pulse that came with comic books. So from here on out, I'm going to just be going through them as they release, essentially. And they started off with Blur. A little bit of an interesting choice. I believe Blur also did have a figure in the original Shattered Glass line, which is probably why they decided to do it. And a lot of those motifs are brought into this version of the character as well. This one being a sort of repaint and slight retool of the Studio Series version of Blur. You notice this one has an eye patch with a scar. He kind of has an evil smirk. give it that sort of evil feel. I like the colors here. It's still blue. We got some lightning decals, which is a little silly, but okay. But yeah, instead of the sort of hopeful blue, we get this sort of dark blue with the black and everything. So it still feels like Blur, but it is 100% evil Blur, without a doubt. And I think that's kind of funny. You know, you'll notice that with a lot of these. Some of these feel like they're color swaps where they take another character and apply their colors to it and that thing. And then other ones, it's a very interesting way to do it. It's kind of like shinies. You know, if you play Pokemon, you know, there's these alternate colored versions of them, and they're called shinies. And some of them look really good. Some of them don't look as good. Some of them look barely different at all. And Blur is kind of a weird one where it is very Blur, you know, but he's evil Blur. He's black and dark blue, and yeah, so interesting choice to say the least. And here he is, of course, next to his good counterpart, and you can really see what I was talking about, where we have all the dark colors versus the light colors. You know, similar ideas. He's still blue, but we've got a lot of white on this version. We've got a little bit more of some yellow popping around the face and the front there. No lightning on this version of the character, so yeah, it's a very interesting sort of redesign, but they do feel like different characters. I think the eye patch helps a lot. They both came with this sort of additional piece, but I feel like on this one it kind of makes it feel like he lost a hand or something. I don't know, it gives it a bit more of an evil flair, but here they are side by side to give you an idea of what an evil Blur looks next to a good Blur. And then all ready to combat the evil Optimus Prime, we have the heroic Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons. And yeah, this is definitely not what you think of when you think Megatron, but he still has that vibe to him. He's got some interesting sort of details, like the black head, feeling very reminiscent of those early Marvel days. You know, that G1 Megatron there. But obviously, we've got a lot of whites. We've got some yellows and reds and some blues here. And if you can't tell by all these weird extra bits, he's supposed to transform into a jet. However, he is just a reuse of the Siege Megatron version, so that version turned into a tank. This one can obviously still turn into a tank, but a tank isn't exactly a heroic, you know, thing. If this is supposed to be a good Megatron. So we have some extra bits here that allow him to become a jet, and it's a weird translation. And as you can see here, this came broken, because I believe this is all translucent plastic. I don't usually have a problem with translucent plastic. Transformers fans get a little scared because the Transformers are more brittle if they're made out of translucent plastic, and if you're constantly folding them and bending them and doing all these things to change them, they can break. I don't usually run into that problem, but this one, yeah, super glued it. I contacted Hasbro and they did nothing about it. So yeah, I mean, I like all the blue. I like translucent figures, but I can't argue sometimes that does happen. But I don't know. I think the black bits, ironically, considering black can be considered such an evil color choice for a character, I feel like they do a lot for this Megatron. They make him stand out with the creamy whites. He's not like a stark white. He's more of a creamy white color. And I don't know. It works for him. I don't know if I would go with that for a Megatron if I were asked to make a good Megatron. But he pulls it off, you know? So I like that about him. I think it's all the additional little red bits and yellow bits. It gives it a very, I don't know, Gundam-esque feel to it. So that's good. And here he is next to another version of Megatron. I actually don't have the Siege Megatron, the regular one, but I do have this 35th anniversary cell-shaded version, which is the same figure. It just kind of has the, you know, the reflective bits to give it that animated look. Even though in the cartoon, he never really looked like this. It was more so the movie, very briefly. That's a different topic, but you can see there's the very stark gray upon darker gray with a little red here. You know, they kind of share that if you look at that there. But this one just pops a lot because it almost looks like you took a bunch of bits and pieces from different robots and put them together versus this very monochrome, you know, evil. Clearly, he used to transform into a gun. Now it's a tank versus this poppy guy. So I think they do enough to differentiate the character. I think it was smart to go with the Siege version. I think it just looks good. And yeah, I don't know. It's a good look for the character. I will say that. It looks nice. I think the extra bits maybe could use a little bit more, but in robot mode, they do enough to make him look different, I guess. Maybe not. Maybe it's not that great, if I'm being honest. But it's something. It's something. And now we get to my personal favorite Transformer, Starscream. Starscream is another one of those characters where he's so defined by who he is and what he does, and it's interesting to see that taken in a new direction, because obviously regular Starscream is a sniveling, you know, backstabber. Meanwhile, this guy, while he still kind of has the ego of Starscream, he's way more heroic and daring, and he's I don't know, he's kind of got like a Superman vibe to him, where he's always willing to do whatever it takes to save the day, and it's like, that's not Starscream. Well, yeah, of course it's not Starscream. And I guess if you're a Transformers fan, the first thing you'll notice looking at him is his Jetfire color scheme. Of course, in the cartoon, and since then in other iterations, Starscream has had a very much a connected history with Jetfire or Skyfire in the original cartoon, and so with that toy being red and white, they decided to apply that to Starscream here. Now, I will say, as you can see, you can probably see it in places, yellow plastic. So, for whatever reason, the version of plastic, the type of plastic they were using when this figure was made, the white just yellows. Obviously, there's some other bits that are white, different type of white plastic, I presume. But yeah, you can notice it. It's not invisible. It's honestly much worse in person than it is on camera. And, you know, when he's on his shelf, it's not that big of a deal, but it is upsetting because you don't want your figures to look bad, especially when you pay money for them and, you know, it's part of your collection. And there have been temporary fixes to fix this, but from what I can tell, there's no permanent fix to stop this from happening. It's just going to happen. So it's rather unfortunate, honestly. I like this design. I like the swords he comes with. That's once again a very Starscream thing, but maybe not the Starscream you're thinking of. You know, it's accurate, but it isn't. So I like that. I don't know how I feel about them using the Siege design. You know, this is him with a Cybertronian jet mode. You'll notice when we get to some of the other figures, not all of them are Cybertronian. Well, I mean, we just looked at Optimus and Ratchet earlier. Those were not Cybertronian. They were clearly Earth-based. So, I mean, it still looks like Starscream. It's undeniable, but I don't know what was the reasoning between choosing one design over the other. Who knows? Either way, it's a good-looking figure, but it is ruined by whatever was going on at the factory at that time. I hope they've moved away from that since then. I think they have, but because I like this. I like the Jetfire motif. I like the characterization in the comics of this one, like I mentioned earlier. He's so different and yet at the same time still very Starscream. He's got an ego about him, but not in the way that our regular Starscream does. And I like that, but, you know, as a figure, there's some issues that are just sort of impossible to ignore. But he's still cool. I will say that. Here he is next to the regular Siege Starscream. You know, those early days with all the muddied, like, effects and wear and tear on them. Weird, tiny Decepticon logo. Interesting choices were made here. It's an attempt to get that G1 look into a Tetrajet design. It mostly works, but yeah, here they are. And there's, of course, the classic sort of reds and blues, and there's still reds and blues here, but that overtake of white versus the gray here, it really stands out. And I think the white head versus the black head, this one has blue eyes, which you can kind of see from the light piping on here, versus his red eyes. Like, yeah, I think they stand apart really, really well. And I think color-wise, this was a very smart choice to kind of go for that color, because he looks completely different from the original version of him. Smart move. let's talk Goldbug. So Goldbug, for those of you who don't know, in the original continuity in G1 in the 80s, Bumblebee is destroyed, he's damaged, he's hurt, whatever you want to call it. He is then rebuilt as the character Goldbug with a new head, a new body, he's got a gold color scheme. And so, in Shattered Glass, something similar happens, of course. And so he went from being Bumblebee to Goldbug. So this is Bumblebee, you know, the character you think of, the little brother of the Transformers, the fun-loving guy. But now he's evil, and he's already become this evolved form. Once again, making another Pokemon reference, he's evolved from Bumblebee into Goldbug. And yeah, I mean, he's black and gold. Like, it works if you think of Bumblebee, even though Bumblebee's had similar color schemes like this in toys and things. And I mean, looking at this, it doesn't look too far off what you would imagine would take place in a movie version of Bumblebee. But, you know, this is an evil Bumblebee while still maintaining a lot of that aspect. Very similar to a character like Blur. Now, I mentioned earlier, Blur was still blue. He still had that going on, but black. And so now, in this very similar case with Bumblebee here, you know, instead of him being all gold, or Goldbug rather, he's got gold accents, and that is the inverse. I guess you had to have some sort of gold, because if his name was Goldbug, he's got to be gold. So it's there. It's not overbearing. Interesting thing is he uses the sort of cliff jumper body as opposed to the Bumblebee body. And when I bring Bumblebee in, you'll kind of see what I mean. But, I mean, yeah, like his head is fine. He's got the blue. I think the blue accents really well with the black and gold. He's not too busy looking. He looks fine. He's totally serviceable. It's a little figure, but it'll do. And of course, here he is next to Bumblebee, this being the Netflix series version of Bumblebee, which of course doesn't make any sense because he didn't transform into a Volkswagen in the Netflix series. But yeah, this was one of those things where I believe it was a limited sort of a deal with the Volkswagen company to get him as a Volkswagen Beetle again, because famously Volkswagen was not a fan of making war toys, as they put it. So Bumblebee was not allowed to be like this anymore. But every now and then, like for the Bumblebee movie and this figure, they decide to go ahead and give us the, I guess, correct versions of Bumblebee. So Bumblebee, Goldbug, same guy. Yeah, I mean, they're obviously very similar, but you can tell this guy is not made of a Volkswagen versus this guy, who very much clearly is. But they still look like alternate versions of each other. It's not crazy to assume this guy is a good version of this guy, who is a bad version of this guy, and so on and so forth. So it works. It works. All right, time for the big boy here. The sort of crown jewel of the very first wave of the Shattered Glass figures was, of course, Jetfire. This one being based off of the Siege version of Jetfire. Instead of being that red and white, as I mentioned earlier with Starscream, he got, once again, kind of evil bad guy, kind of Ava colors with the purple and the greens and the blacks and all of that here. It's cool. I mean, he's like a giant, menacing, evil robot decked in all black. He looks sleek. He looks neat. I love, sort of pick this guy, move him around. I love the translucent green bits on the eyes here. I mean, you can, I believe you can take off the mask, reveal the man inside. There's Jetfire. I like to keep the mask on just because it differentiates him, you know, a little bit. So I think that helps, and just having all the extra sort of battle attachments, if you will, you know, it makes him feel menacing, it makes him feel evil versus the scientist that Jetfire normally is in his G1 continuity self. The only issue I have with this thing is sort of this panel, because of like the way this pin is, it's not actually like, can you see what I mean? So like, see here, it's supposed to go in there and it don't. Instead, it sort of sticks out where it's not supposed to. So you can't properly close this up and it juts out just a bit. just a factory error. It's a little annoying. You know, if someone at Hasbro wants to help me out with that, that would be great. But I mean, it doesn't bother me too much because you can't really tell. But if you know, well, then you know, and then it's annoying. But yeah, there's that. Oh, and you can take off the chest piece and do the symbol switch, just like the original toy. So if you wanted him as a good Decepticon or a bad Autobot, it's up to you. And for comparison with regular Jetfire, I don't have one. I don't got it, so I don't have anything to compare it with. Sorry. You'll just have to imagine the Jetfire. So with the first wave done and IDW already announcing that they were going to be finishing off their comic book run, we sort of assumed that was it. But we got a second wave of Shattered Glass figures, first off starting with Ultra Magnus here. And Magnus is cool. He's obviously in his Diaclone colors, so this sort of doubles as two figures if you want him as an homage to the original Japanese toy before it was brought over and made into Ultra Magnus. Well, then you can have that. Or if you want this Shattered Glass version of Magnus with this like scary demon head, you can do that too. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it sort of goes for a very similar thing with some of these other characters where you have the colors. They're there. A lot of the colors you would associate with an Autobot, but he's also drenched at these black bits that really give it a sinister feel. Instead of this feeling like a bright, colorful, almost Superman or Captain America heroic look, you can tell, and then not just because of the skull face, but you can tell that this guy is not to be trusted. He's an evil bastard, and that's very, very evident. Because he does have a blue Optimus inside, just because it's a Magnus figure, so there is an Optimus in there somewhere. He does have a Matrix, which is different from the Matrix that Shattered Glass Optimus Prime had. This one is red and silver, which I guess if you get the Matrix in this universe, it just coincides with who you are, which is this red silver boy. But you put it on his sword, it kind of, I don't know, you can pretend it's like he powers it up and it becomes like a weapon, like a big construct, almost like a Green Lantern or something, and he can attack you with it, and he can poke you. He'll poke you. And here he is next to the regular Ultra Magnus that came out in the Kingdom toy line, which looks great. I really like this Magnus. He's just a big, blocky dude, which is how I imagine G1 Magnus to be. And I keep saying it, but like you can see here, it's the same red and blues. Well, not in the same places, but you get what I mean. But look at all the white. You know, you replace the white with the black, and you immediately get this very sinister feeling version of the character. And I think that goes a long way. Obviously, the head is going to be a dead giveaway, but I think it's an interesting choice to take a chance to homage a different kind of Transformers toy. Like I mentioned, these were the colors that Japan got, and then when we adapted into Transformers, we turned it into this. So to make this kind of a chance to get that toy out there, it's double meaning. It's a neat option, but it still works as an evil Ultra Magnus, if you ask me. So one of those chances where this does make sense. Next we have here is Blaster and Rewind, and it's a very desaturated take on the character. This is one where we sort of go completely different from what the original looked like. I'm not sure if there's any sort of references or callbacks to any other toy or whatever, but I mean, Blaster is a very loud, poppy character in the comics and cartoons, and now here, he's very boring. He's just a drab gray color. He's like a negative almost. It looks like with the teal and the black face with the red eyes, it's like a complete inverse of what you'd imagine the character to be, which is appropriate, you know? Like if you're gonna have an evil version of an established character, he still does all the same things. As I mentioned, he comes with Rewind here. So Rewind is red, and it's based off a figure we'll look at in a second. Instead of the black colors, he's got this bright red here, and you know, you can still do the tape thing and all that, and it's the same figure, but he just looks a lot more boring, and I guess in a good way. Like, I still like all of the colors. He gives off a very 90s vibe, you know, like that era of 90s that's still very influenced by the 80s, but distinctly feels 90s, if you know what I mean. And I don't mean just Transformers, I mean just in general. But yeah, I think it works. It works as this guy that is so clearly not meant to be trusted. he looks scary. He does not look like a fun version of the character, but he's not supposed to. So that's appropriate, you know? And so here's regular Blaster with Eject, his other cassette buddy. Same body, just different characters. You know, kind of like Frenzy and Rumble, if you know that. But yeah, look at G1 Blaster. He's got this really sort of confident red and yellow color scheme to him with these sort of gray basic bits. Meanwhile, you've got all the basic gray like all over this guy. Like, this guy feels like a dude you want to hang out with and play music. This guy plays podcasts that spread misinformation, and that's the vibe. So I think they did a good job of taking all the fun out of Blaster appropriately. It's, you know, if you imagine the character, you're gonna want this. This is an evil version. Do not trust this man. Do not trust this Blaster with your kids. Do not leave him alone anywhere near you. Just get him out of here. Get him out of here. Get this guy on the phone. Leave this guy out of it. Okay, time for things to get a little bit complicated. So what you're seeing here is Shattered Glass Slicer and Exosuit. And this is Slicer, this is Exosuit. So, obviously, if you know Transformers, this is Wheeljack. He looks like Wheeljack. He's got the fins on him, you know, like, this is based on the Earthrise toy. Like, that's what this is. And then this is a weaponizer. It's a toy that they introduced where you can, like, take off bits of them and, like, rearrange it and, like, apply it to other characters and kind of give them, like, weaponry and stuff. It's a cool concept. It actually is a cool concept. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. So, Shattered Glass, is this an alternate universe version of Slicer? Well, that's where it gets complicated. So the Slicer color scheme was used as Shattered Glass Wheeljack way back in the day. Because, okay, in the 80s, there was a toy line called Transformers Action Masters, which were little figures that didn't transform. In that line, we got Wheeljack. Wheeljack is a guy with a white, red, and green color scheme, which we'll see in a bit. Then they also repainted that figure to be called Slicer, and he looked like this. He also came with a big vehicle that came in this colors. That's why this is here, to reminisce the Action Master toy of here. If you'll notice, all of the figures so far, if they're Decepticons, have a red Decepticon logo. This dude's is pink. I assume that's because if you want to get this figure, very similar to the Ultra Magnus, how we mentioned that was like meant to be a reference to a Japanese toy, right? This is meant to be a reference to that Action Master figure. So if you want him and just want him to be Slicer, you can. But Slicer is a Decepticon. So if he's supposed to be Slicer, then he should be, you know, a good Decepticon. However, he's also Wheeljack. You know, like, he's Wheeljack. In the comic book that he came with, he serves every purpose that Wheeljack would. He's an Autobot, he works with the Autobots, and he's in Shattered Glass Wheeljack's colors, but he's also Action Master Slicer's colors, and he's called Slicer, and he's a Decepticon for it. So, I don't know. I like the colors. I like the harsh sort of grays and blacks against these strong blues and the faded red and all the translucent red bits around him, which is also a reference to the other figures that were released. This guy's just a box of references that if you don't know about, you're probably not affected by. But if you do know about it, it makes your brain sort of collapse in on itself. And it's a little confusing and frustrating, especially when you buy a toy and then you kind of want that toy to coincide with the comic books, and it ultimately does not matter. This is just a guy called Slicer. He's in the Shattered Glass universe. Done. You can make up whatever story you want. But when it comes with a pack-in comic book that you're supposed to read and assume this is a story about the toy, doesn't really... I like him. I like the look of him. I like the weird sort of bronzy, goldish look on him there. He comes with this gun. You could put it on his back. I don't know. I kind of have it tilted because it looks interesting, but I like him. It's just he hurts my brain. That's all. This is cool. Like I said, Valentine's Day colors. Whatever. And here he is, of course, next to the Earthrise Wheeljack. You can totally see they're the same guy. This is Wheeljack. If this is Wheeljack, this is Evil Wheeljack. However, it's a double, triple reference character, and he looks good. Once again, we have that theme going on where we have the light colors here and the dark colors here, so that makes sense. You know, it's just if we had a regular Wheeljack or Slicer rather, or Wheeljack, Slicer Jack, Wheel Swack, Shield Jack. And then if the last one wasn't bad enough, we have Flamewar. Now, Flamewar, this is a history lesson for those of you who don't know. Flamewar, in the original continuity, is a Decepticon. She is a relatively new character. She's got this sort of flaming effect, you know, to her. Now, that's normal. The problem is, we've never had a Flamewar in the current toy line. We've had other Flamewars, but this is sort of a new iteration of the character. But this is how she looks normally. I wish I had other Flamewar toys to show you, but this is her regular color scheme. So, in a world where all the toys I've shown you so far, where all the colors are different, and there are all these things where I'm going on and off about like, oh, the darker color scheme, the desaturated colors, the black colors, this is just her. If you were to pick up a regular comic book with Flamewar in it, not Shattered Glass theme, you would find a girl that looks like this. So in the alternate universe, where up is down and left is right, she looks like this. I don't understand. Now, I know this is just an easy way to get a Flamewar figure out to people. So if you like Flamewar and you want to see her, this is the way to do it. But it makes it confusing for people that like Shadow. This is where they just sort of, I felt like they threw it all out the window. And part of me doesn't blame them, because ultimately, who cares? They're just toys. They're a way to get toys. If you like the design of this character, it's like she's got like this. She came with this, which inflated her price, by the way. I don't know if it was worth the price. It's like a little pterodactyl dude that can turn into like a bow or an axe if you fold it like this, you know. But whatever. It's not about that. I don't think this was worth the price increase. The point is I have no idea why she looks the way she does, and why in the comic I read, she doesn't act that much different. She's still a passionate sort of weirdo. I don't know. It's just, it's a weird choice. It's not a bad choice. You know, like my adult brain can clearly see that it's like, oh, it's just supposed to be a way to get the toy out. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. I get, how did I have this? I don't remember how I had this on her arm. I don't really care. I get that, but I would like it to also make sense in the fiction that you're selling me. And I don't know. I want an explanation. I know there are people, because I've talked to them, that follow me from Hasbro. If you could explain to me what the heck went on with Flamewar, I'd appreciate it. That's all. I just want to know. That's all. That's all I'm asking for. And here she is next to the Transformers Legacy Prime RC, which she is based on. Clearly, it's the exact same body, just with a different paint job. This was released rather recently. It's based on the Transformers Prime cartoon, sort of brought into more of a G1-ified design, kinda. And then, yeah, Flamewar, ever since her original toy, was sort of based on Prime RC. So it's appropriate, it's fitting, makes sense. Just, this is Shattered Glass Flamewar, who is an opposite of regular Flamewar, even though they look exactly the same. Finally, we reach one of the biggest icons of the Shattered Glass world, and that, of course, is Soundwave. Soundwave, being one of the most iconic Transformers in general, gets a pretty snazzy update in the Shattered Glass world. We've got this bright white, we've got these interesting blue colors, we've got some green highlights, and as you can see there, he has a bandana on his head. And yeah, I think this really does go a long way to go from this cold, calculating, ultimate Decepticon in a way, to what is now a freedom fighter. And I don't know, I dig it. Like, this is how you do it. This is how you sort of update the character. Nice detail, the headband back there. Like, this is almost like the template for what you should do for a Shattered Glass character. Just give him an alternate color scheme that screams, okay, this is completely different. Like, this is not Soundwave as you know him at all. This is a new take on the character. He is good, he is righteous, he is willing to do whatever it takes to save his friends. He looks great, and I think the color scheme really, really helps in that department. Ravage follows suit. Instead of being a sort of black, sleek, jaguar-looking thing, he is white. Very much like Soundwave. Almost exactly like Soundwave because of the blue and everything, obviously. It's a little bit interesting just because regular Ravage doesn't look exactly like Soundwave usually, so for them to look like that is a little weird, but I mean, it still looks very different going from that black to this bright white. It works. Laserbeak, on the other hand, is weird just because he's just red again. You know, like, not a whole lot of variety there. You think of Laserbeak, you think of this sort of red little bird guy, and here he is now. A weird choice, because as we'll see soon, this is based on the sort of Earth mode, you know, the cassette tape, Earthrise sound. Well, technically it's not Earthrise Soundwave. Netflix series Soundwave. But this Laserbeak, as you can kind of see by him having no face, is supposed to be like a Cybertronian Laserbeak, which came in the Siege toy line. And so even though this is all Earth-based, this one is not. And I think that's a weird... I don't know, I just think that's a weird choice. I don't know why that was done. Maybe someone can tell me, but yeah. But still, overall, Soundwave, he looks great. Like I said, this is the definitive sort of how you do Shattered Glass. There's enough different. The bandana adds a lot of character. Really, really good stuff. And here he is compared with regular Soundwave. Sort of like earlier when I mentioned with Starscream, changing the eye color does a lot to sort of update the feeling. You know, you have this very cold, you know, very simple version of the character, and then this very bright, sort of undeniable version of Soundwave, and I think those two mesh really well. As you can see here, you kind of see what I'm talking about with Laserbeak. It's like the red and grays, and then red and black and gray. Like, not enough is different there. Meanwhile, Ravage, all black deco with some grays and silvers. I say all black and then I immediately contradict myself. Versus the bright white and the blue. Totally different. Laserbeak's a little weird. And then, yeah, this is an Earth version, so he's got little birdie eyes and a beak and everything. So I don't know why that was done. But especially when this is the cassette version. You know, if it had released with the other version, the Siege version, then I guess it wouldn't have mattered. But this is so clearly the regular sort of version. Oh, he still does the oh, well. There we go. They still do that. So that's, you know, at least they can do it. And there you guys go. That is the entire Transformers Shattered Glass collection from the new IDW-inspired toy line, exclusive to Hasbro Pulse, well, at least most of it. I thank you guys so much for watching. It was fun kind of putting this together. Shattered Glass is kind of a weird thing, right? Like, some people genuinely hate it, if I'm being honest. I don't really get that, but, like, you know, it's just sort of a fun concept. Good is evil, evil is good. You totally get it just from that alone. So, I hope you enjoyed watching. Feel free to check out some of my other videos on my channel. I've got other Transformers content. I've got other collection videos. And then early next year, first week of the year, I'll put up my top 10 of 2022. So that's really it. So share the video if you like. I'm at Anthony Lantern on Instagram and Twitter. I am also on Anthony Lantern at Letterboxd if you'd like. Comment, subscribe. I said all that, I think. I don't really know. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. Take care.